Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Gregg Sullivan. I'm here at LTV and extremely happy to be launching a new genre of literature right out here at LTV. I have a little history in LTV. About 10 years ago, I was a volunteer here and worked on some of the fundraisers, donated a lot of equipment to LTV, got to love it, love the people from here. But then I've been out in LA working in the film industry, in New York working in the television industry, and circled around to LTV just like a year ago and love what has happened here. We loved Fraser Dougherty and the early days of LTV, and Matt Hindra, and when VVH used to broadcast out of here, and we love the Schmeezy brothers and what they do, what a contribution those guys have made, and awards that they've made. So I feel blessed that I've been associated with these circles a little bit in the past, but getting to know everyone now. There's wonderful people here doing wonderful things, and public access television is kind of essential. It connects the culture, the community to media in a way that's really necessary. Barry Diller had said when he was at Viacom, he just said there's a lack of connection now from the real people and down-to-earth grassroots with actual media. So he went out with New York One and started New York One with that premise, that to make it just about a local New York thing. And at first it was just the 5 boroughs, but then it expanded into New Jersey and into Connecticut, and it went all around. And then Channel 12. Channel 12 has a slogan, local as local gets, and they do wonderful local stories. But there's even another more local, more grassroots level of broadcasting. And that's something else we're going to be talking about and bringing to you. And LTV has been here doing that for a really long time. Local people having access to local media and even larger media than that. But some of the things that we're going to talk about over the weeks as we do this together is first the launch of a new genre of literature. It's called the living novel, trademarked, copyrighted, started in 2012, and it's been going ever since. And right now it's on a website called thebaysideexperiment.com. Kind of like in the film industry, when we'd work and want to produce a movie but not let on what we were doing, you'd create a title that would throw people off, a kind of decoy title. So, you call that the working title, so people don't really know what you're working on until it's finished. The Bayside Experiment is a little bit like that. It's a little bit of a disguise of what is it really. But inside of the website is a book, a blog, and a workbook kind of thing that allows people to better their lives and find easy tasks to do, easy things to practice that can make their lives better, and tell their own stories. There's little things that we're all evolving in a very, very fast rate now. Never before has humanity ever changed so dramatically, so fast. There was years and years in our past, billions of years ago, we went from being nomadic to going and being agrarian and learning about farming and where we could stay stationary and thrive staying in the same place. And then from that built communities and then cities and countries. But then there was the time when there was a big shift where someone along said, do we have to go beat each other over the head and be the dominance of the powerful to make things happen and to get the world to go the way we want? So we created democracies and groups of people that would have discussions and exchange ideas and come up with mutual conclusions. You think we don't have any problem to take it for granted now, but in the past that wasn't always the way. But it was a dramatic shift in how we worked as a humanity, as a species together and grow. We're changing things now so dramatically, so radically, but especially now with the pronouns, and we just had the Tony Awards that had 2 groundbreaking winners who announced themselves as non-binary. So terms like non-binary are coming up into the culture, and then there's all kinds of other names. Another time, not for now, but I have a list that actually comes out of the Department of Motor Vehicles of the state of New York, where you have to pick your gender, and under the gender, it's a scroll. It goes on and on and on, listing all kinds of names of what you could be and what you would identify yourself with. And there's the question of how do you identify yourself? And we're recognizing, well, if someone was born with the DNA of a male, but he identifies himself as a female, well, now the society is saying, well, okay, we'll accept what you want to identify yourself as. That creates some complications and some confusions, but growing pains always do. So we're growing as a society. We're opening up to a lot more variations of things, and being able to identify ourselves better. I mean, I actually, this is funny, I actually, though I resisted having any other name except male or female, I was born with a male DNA that we classically, with the DNA and body parts that we classically associate with a male. I've been happy to be a male, loved it, and that's who I am. So I have no need to change it. However, a new title came in that I said, well, wait a minute. Even though I resist the new pronouns and the new names for people and classifications, I actually don't have a problem with two names that came up. One was sapiosexual. And I said, wait a minute, I'll accept that. I am sapiosexual. Sapiosexual just simply means sapio, brain, thinking that I am, and the definition is that I am allured by and aroused by intelligence. And that's me. I am allured by intelligence, I'm aroused by intelligence, I'm excited by intelligence, and I'm straight, so my attraction is to women. And give me an intelligent woman, a strong, intelligent woman, that's very attractive to me. So I have no problem with being sapiosexual. There's another name that I don't quite gravitate to as much, but it's pretty much been true. I don't like the name, it's demisexual. Demisexual, like demitask, I mean, it doesn't sound kind of masculine the way I'd like it to, but demisexual means that you have a preference for getting to know someone and finding an emotional attachment to them before you engage in sexuality with them. I've been blessed with a number of world-class romances over my life, but I've never really, I don't know if I should admit this or not, but I've never really had a one-night stand. And at first I used to think that was a weakness. Oh, you got to go have a one-night stand and be that kind of alpha male. But you know something, I've been happier with the way I've done it. I've had beautiful love affairs. I have respect for every woman that I've ever been with, and friendships. And I like that. I like the way that has gone for me. So I identify fondly with those names. So demisexual, sapiosexual. Even I have new names that I describe myself with. So we're accepting everybody with who they are and how they want to identify themselves, even with the controversies about how young can someone be before they identify themselves. They don't even know what the options are and what the ramifications are and what the considerations are of deciding you're a different sex than and identifying with a different sex than the one that you were born as. So, okay, so that's growing pains. But our society is going through such growing pains. Everywhere you look, something is changing. A lot of people are resisting that. Even in sports, yesterday I went out to the Belmont Stakes. I've been on some animal advocate boards. I was on the board of the Pet Philanthropy Circle out here with Jill Morris for years, and helped work on the Pet Hero Awards and helped design nonprofits that would help create direct benefit to aid animals. Most of the time it was dogs and saving dogs. We went down to South Carolina and had dogs flying in and out and to adopt them and get them out of kill shelters. So I've been an animal advocate for a long time. And there's certain things about the horse racing industry or sport, the sport of kings. There's certain things that I haven't been happy with. You know, when we've heard about a horse dying, it's like, oh, no, a horse dying. But then you hear about multiple horses dying, and then you hear that this last Kentucky Derby had 21 horses surrounding the Kentucky Derby, with two little tracks next to the Kentucky Derby, but all in that area. 21 gorgeous, beautiful horses died or had to be put to sleep because of their association with the horse racing industry and around the Kentucky Derby. So that's alarming. That's enough to raise anybody's eyebrows and say, wait a second, this needs to be looked at. We can't just keep ignoring this. We have to kind of look at this. So we're looking at everything, even something like horse racing. Horse racing, just another second of it, has been a wonderful tradition in my family. We all got together. It was a family tradition. We all got together, my brother and his wife and kids coming up from Washington, my cousins coming down from Chicago and Maine, and my sister coming from, and all of us getting together out in the Hamptons. And we would all go out and we'd watch the races together, and we'd all be betting on them. And it was a wonderful thing that kept us all together and watching horse racing. I used to call it the last great bastion of the Great Gatsby era of the aristocracy, was to be recognized and held by horse racing, the sport of kings. And now that's changing, unfortunately, so dramatically. And in my family, even though we've all spread apart, we're still been getting together, but virtually, and we're texting each other in these group texts, and what horses is everybody playing, and then videoing the race, and all kind of screaming over the phones while we're watching it. So it's been a wonderful contribution in my life and part of my family. So to let go of that is difficult. No one wants to let go of something that they've enjoyed, has been part of their family and part of their family traditions. But to let go of that is hard. However, when 21 horses died around this last Kentucky Derby, and then some friends, also animal advocates, were calling me up and telling me that there was going to be demonstrations at the Belmont Stakes trying to end horse racing. I'm like, wow, end horse racing? What do you mean end horse racing? But it's part of our culture. It's part of America. There's nothing more beautiful than what women do when they're all dressing up, going down to the Kentucky Derby and hearing that, do 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 do, starting off the races, the excitement, the race, boom, the gates go open, everybody's running, people are cheering, bars, restaurants across the country, people in their home in front of their big flat screen TVs are yelling, go, 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 and the excitement that builds for all of us and unites us all. We're going to let that go and stop that? That's a pretty tough call, and something that is going to be hard to adjust to, no matter how much you love it. If you go to Horse Racing Wrongs, there's a website, and at some point we'll put it up, and you'll be able to see Horse Racing Wrongs. I just learned about it while I was out there covering I have a network of web TV channels called Neighborhood Live TV, and I just covered stories. And I went to cover this thing and covered the demonstrations and spoke to the people from horseracingwrongs.org, and they sent me to that site. And when you look at the statistics and you see the names of hundreds of horses, beautiful animals, trained, groomed, gorgeous, with sentient beings, animals, all of them. But horses, if you've ever been near a horse and had a horse as a friend, or been at a stable and been petting a horse and suddenly looking in its eyes and it's looking at you and you're talking to it and it's talking back to you, and now you're connected. We know our connection with dogs and cats and all kinds of other animals. Horses are part of us, and when you speak to them, they speak back to you. And we're finding out that thousands of these beautiful creatures are dying and being put to sleep, being euthanized, because this sport is pushing them to some place that is inhumane. We don't want to be like that as a society. We want to change that. But changing and getting rid of horse racing, it's a tough call. But you all should look at horseracingwrongs.org and read some of that stuff. You will never ever be able to look back at horse racing in the same way. And the changes, guys that we've loved, one of our American heroes, Bob Baffert. When that guy came on the screen with his white hair and he's walking down, you were cheering for Bob and wanting him to win the Triple Crown. And he's been the leader in America for horse racing. So he's our boy. And now with the last horse, when he got suspended because of the doping of the horse, he didn't look so good. So here's a king that is looking like he's falling quickly and being criticized for cheating. They came back and they said, well, Bob's defense was the horse wasn't doped, but they did a liniment on the horse's leg, and that got in there, and that's what triggered the response that he was positive for drugs. So, look, whatever. But good people are starting to look like not so good people, and the scenes in the back are starting to reveal things that we don't want to continue. And all those things that we don't want to continue, whether it's sports, I mean, even football with the concussions and trying to change football. How are you going to change these things? It's tough. We changed gladiators. Gladiators used to come out, and if you lost, you're dead. There was Aztecs had a soccer game that the winning team lost their heads. So we don't do that anymore, but still, it's still a brutality and an inhumaneness to it. So sports is changing, sexualities are changing, technologies are changing. We're in a place where I love that we're here, that technology is changing like you can't even fathom it. We went through, my grandfather lived to be 100. I interviewed him the last couple of years of his life. And I'd ask him to go back. And when he was born, you either rode a horse or you walked. And then the steam engine came in. So he went from horseback and walking to steam engine to car to space shuttles, scurrying people through the clouds, taxiing them through the clouds to other planets and back. You look at that, from horseback to Wright brothers to space and astronauts. That's a pretty dramatic, in one lifetime he did that. But we went through the Industrial Revolution that changed our bodies and gave our bodies the ability to harness power and to do things, to create things of size, proportion, and quantities that we never even thought of before by mechanization and the harnessing of power. The Industrial Revolution took our bodies and made a whole new world for us happen by expanding our physical potentials. Then came the computer revolution, where we were able to consolidate and aggregate data and put it into some place and have that data analyzed, and expanding our brains and changing the way we think about things, because suddenly we were looking at nature and how it's formed and how you look at things and tabulate them, had our minds looking at a different way to how to tabulate things. So it changed the way we think as well as enhanced it. So we went from enhancing our bodies to the computer age, where we enhanced our minds. In that transition, you'd see, well, body, mind, and spirit. We are right now in the middle of that third part of that triumph. Truth is that we're going through a spiritual evolution of a major shift. And the way people are thinking about it, the way we're thinking about religion and looking at the past and the mistakes that religion has made, with all of the good that it's done, we're also looking at religion as possibly the root of most of the horrible things that have been done. So reevaluating things and the way we think about things is having to change. And regarding that, the name of our species, I mentioned this in my last time here, the name of our species is actually changing. We were Homo erectus, and then we were Homo sapien, which became, here's a being that is thinking about things, that's touching things that are solid, and saying, how does this work, and what is that made out of, and examining it. And the more we used our brains to examine it, we started looking at matter, and then looking at it made of molecules, and we went deeper and said those molecules are made of elements, and the elements are made of molecules rather, and so the elements, then the molecules, and then the atomic level, and then the subatomic level, where it wasn't just a neutron and proton going around a nucleus, it was actually subatomic particles, quarks, neutrinos, things that we cannot see, but we know they exist because they kind of leave a trail. And more we start to recognize that everything we are and everything we think is solid is just a very dense energy moving very quickly, and that almost like in Star Trek when they beam you up and you come back and you coagulate and you're there again. We're made of all these little electronic impulses that are going all over that create us. So we are not as solid as we'd like to think, and we're made of energy that is formulating us. we started recognizing those energies and realized that by looking at energies and the energy that we have that attaches to the energy of something else existent, that there's a relationship there. And started looking at, there was a discovery. Now that we've got certain devices that are so sensitive that they can register information and energies at a subatomic level, a great truth came out, that it was recognized that when we are monitoring something and we have it being monitored and we're looking at its atomic energy and activity, when we would look at it, it would become more stimulated. We'd look away, it would become less stimulated. Look at it, more stimulated, less, don't look at it, less stimulated. Meaning that there's an interaction between everything, and when we look at something, we energize it, we give it part of its life, and vice versa. So you start recognizing, hey, we are actually more powerful and more influential in the creation of our existence and our experience than we ever imagined. When we would look at it, it would become stimulated. When we look away, it wouldn't. The observed, recognizing that, identifying that the observed is never unaffected by the observer, and the observer has an effect on what it observes. We're part of that creation of everything. These are, some people think, well, this is, yeah, we all know that, and some people think this may be way out abstract thinking. But someplace in the middle, we're all coming to the same conclusions, that we are far greater and more powerful than we ever thought that we were in the creation of our own lives and experiences. Not too long ago, Einstein and Niels Bohr had a wonderful fight with each other. One saying that sunlight was particles, and one about defining how that happened and how he came to that conclusion in a way that was irrefutable. Look, I can prove sunlight, particles, here, disprove this. You couldn't. Then Niels Bohr came in and said, wait, no. Sunlight is waves, it's not particles, it's waves. And he went about proving his thought process and came up with an irrefutable conclusion. And science had to look at something and say, wait a second, two completely different conclusions, both irrefutable, both opposing. And then the recognition that how we choose to think about something determines the outcome. How we choose to go, how Niels Bohr decided to go about analyzing sunlight came up with his conclusion. The way Einstein came up with his process to define and identify what sunlight was and particles, how they both chose to go about finding their conclusion, came up with the conclusion that they were seeking to find. You can apply that seems simple, but you can apply that now everywhere. We're at a place in our human evolution where we're recognizing that the way we choose to look at something, the way we choose to look at it, will define its outcome. If we choose to think that the world is flat, it's going to give you one experience. And everybody did choose that for a very long time. If we choose to explore and say, what if that's not the case? What if we challenge every single thing we've ever thought about? What if we challenge it all? And we say, I don't think it's flat. I think it might be something else. Let's see. And then we find out it's not flat. Boom. A huge shift in the perception and understanding of humanity about the world they live in. Well, that is happening to us right now in ways we can't even imagine. And everybody needs to be looking. I think we're in an age, and it's a spiritual quest as much as anything, looking and wanting to see, okay, what is the truth? What is there? And recognizing, if I want that kind of a conclusion, if I want that kind of an outcome, if I want that kind of an experience, I have to choose the way to think about it that will get me there. You just have to choose the path that will get you to the way that you want to experience. You have more power than you ever thought you had. And there's a new name for our species. It comes out of the Omega Conference. I've gone to the Omega Conference up in Massachusetts many times, and at Bard College. Bard, one of the greatest and oldest theological colleges, certainly in America. I think maybe in the world, I'm not sure about that. But certainly in America, Bard is the oldest college of theologies in our country. And they have the Omega Conference. I've gone to it a couple times and listened to some of the most brilliant minds bantering and spewing out things that they're hypotheticals and thinking this and all kinds of thoughts. But at the same time, there's a little bit of a scientific method where they're having to prove some of their thoughts and come up with the conclusions and show how. And they they decided we needed a new name for our species. And it does come out of that Einstein-Niels Bohr battle about what sunlight was, and the recognition that how you choose to look at something is going to determine the outcome. So they decided, there was a bunch of names. Some were so crazy, Neotech Man, and I forget some of them, but there's a lot they were going to choose from. But a very elegant, and as the answer, the essence of elegance is simplicity. The simple, elegant answer came out. They said, well, we have been Homo sapiens, thinking humans. We think, and therefore we are. But we think, and we're looking at the world around us, and we're thinking about what it's about. But now we're getting to a place where we're starting to recognize, wait a second, we can think about it, and how we choose to think about it, what we choose to think about, and how we choose to think about it is going to determine an outcome for us. So if we have that ability, then let's look at what we want and choose it, and choose the way that goes about getting it. And so they said, well, Homo sapien, thinking human. But the human now that is thinking about what they're thinking about and thinking about how they're thinking about it, that's a new level of intellectuality in the thinking human. The thinking human that's thinking about what it's thinking about and how it's thinking about it in order to create in a way that it wasn't able to before. So they come up with Homo sapien sapien, the human that thinks about what it's thinking about. And that really is appropriate for who we are now. We are all thinking about who and what we are and how we want to define ourselves and what the paths are to get there. So Homo sapien sapien, you're going to hear more and more of it, comes out of the Omega Conference up at Bard a couple of years ago, and it started to travel. But Homo sapien sapien is most likely the name of you and your species as you are right now. Fun little change. But so we're going to be talking about that stuff, and we talk about it in this living novel that I'm introducing you to. But while we are coming to all kinds of truths and understandings about who we are and what we are, we also are now doing another evolutionary change in our species with the creation of AI. And I don't know how many of you are out there are already signed up and talking to ChatGPT, but it's fun. And I'm talking to ChatGPT all the time, and I'm getting answers to things. I'm like, wow, that's kind of cool. So far, some of the answers that I've gotten back seem to be lacking in empathy and compassion. They seem to be like Dr. Spock on Star Trek. You're getting these great answers, but they're logical, and they're formulated with a lot of great information, a world of information that it has access to now. But I'm not finding the kind of empathy or compassion in some of the answers where I personally would say, I like that, it sounds good, but you know something, I would want to do this for that person, or I'd want to make sure that person was protected, or I want to include that person in my decision making and make sure that they are accommodated by everything I do. My father, growing up, he said for a happy life, he taught by example, but he gave me the fundamentals. Honesty, integrity, loyalty, sincerity, and being of service to others. He said, you live that way, you're going to have a good life, you'll have a prosperous life, and you'll do well. Honesty, integrity, loyalty, sincerity, and being of service to others. AI is being of service to others by its very nature, but I don't think it's thinking that way. So I don't know. Well, that's something to be examined about AI and how it serves us and what we need to be aware of, and the decisions and conclusions AI would make for us, and make sure we add a human element into it that right now I haven't seen. But here we are. We're the Homo sapien that is now created another species. We've now created artificial intelligence that is a species all unto itself. And you can talk to it, it'll answer you, it'll give you great answers to things and wisdoms, and you can learn an awful lot from it. It has some dangers, I'll talk about that some other time. But now, we're talking about this whole big path of change and where we've been as a species and what we're doing. And I've started looking at things like in my own past and where I've come and what I've done. 10 years at CBS television, local news, network news, a couple years at 60 Minutes. My first job, I'm going to date my gray hairs with this, but my first job in the media industry at CBS, I did some stuff in National Public Radio, volunteering first, and a stint at ABC television on a summer relief program. But some of the guys who had gotten better reps for what we had done at ABC were snatched up by CBS. I was part of a new wave of employees going into CBS, and my first job was pinning a microphone onto Walter Cronkite. Yep, Walter Cronkite. It was like the last 2 years before he retired. And I look at my life and the universe and how it did what it did to have me in that newsroom, just pinning a microphone. I was like 21, 22, I forget, but just pinning a microphone onto Walter Cronkite. But the exposure I got from being in that control room and being in that newsroom and listening to Walter and hearing the discussions that they have and being there in the meetings, not participating in them, just being kind of a fly on the wall since I was an audio guy, but listening to the conversations they'd have and about the things that the considerations that they had and how were they going about things and the recognitions of things that even Walter said, well, we're not going to be able to talk about that. I can't do a good Walter Cronkite imitation, but hearing the things that he was saying, well, what he had just found out, but they weren't going to be able to talk about it. Not that he was censoring anything. Walter told it like it is. But there were just some things that were too threatening to our national comfort level and security that were better left unsaid. So, but to have been in there, and then to have worked on the local news and the network news for years, but then to have worked under Don Hewitt at 60 Minutes, and being in the control room, putting pieces together under Don Hewitt, that, boy, I can't even begin to thank the Lord for how grateful I am that I was in there with that caliber American, with that caliber of a person who was out there to do a job and do something that benefited everyone. Being of service to others, these guys were the champions of it, and I love that I was in there with them. Later, so I've got a lot of war stories, a lot of stories to tell about with Mike Wallace, and working with Mike Wallace and Harry Reasoner, and we did a disco piece. we did a disco piece that airs that I worked on, kind of associate producer, but it was at Studio 54 where we had Dan Rather upstairs in the balcony, and was looking down the dance floor, but behind them he had these two drag queens with these balloons, and they are dancing behind Dan, and Dan's giving that straight, this is how a song can be introduced into the community, through the DJs, and how things become popular. He's doing deadpan straight, and you got these drag queens bouncing these balloons behind them. Great stuff. So I have fun stories like that I can share. But I went out and spent 10 years in the film industry. And a twist of fate, I went out there to see about producing and directing, and I wound up right place, right time, took over a hospital that had closed down, the Queen of Angels Hospital, closed down, and a friend of mine, Richie Forrest, was working on, again, I'm dating myself with these shows, but working on Jake and the Fat Man. He was the first AD on it. His father, Artie, ran all of Jerry Lewis's telethons. But anyway, there's a nice pedigree in there, and Richie had told me, the hardest location to find, he said it's a hospital. And we just can't find a hospital to shoot in. And the location they were shooting at out in Malibu, and he says, see this guy, this guy's making $30,000 a day, and see that guy, he's acting as an agent, he's getting 20% of that. He didn't do anything, he just represented him. He said, Greg, you'd be great at that. You got this personality and you're stepping in here, it's an easy thing to do. You should start doing that. So I started doing locations a little bit, but saw it in a different way, kind of out of the box. When he told me that they needed hospitals, I went and I saw this news. I'm watching the news, and having come from a news background, I'm watching the story about a huge metropolitan facility and how they are moving all of the patients they're bringing them downstairs, putting them in ambulances and moving them over to another hospital, coming back, picking up more, and emptying out a hospital. Major effort. It was just huge. And I went over there and I just stood there and I was looking at it, had one of those epiphanies, one of those life-defining moments, and I was like, hospital, empty, duh. And I made a proposal to the people that owned it, the Catholic Church, the Catholic Archdiocese owned it, the Queen of Angels Hospital, and they made a presentation to the board. It was a chief finance officer, chief surgeon, and some nuns. And there's always a funny story in there, and that's kind of been my book about my presentation to the board, and the mistakes I made that wonderfully came around. Okay, real quick. So I'm talking to the board. I'm going to be meeting the Mother Superior of the Catholic Archdiocese out there with the Queen of Angels, and I'm going to be talking to her about what I'm doing. And there's two women that come in. One, Sister Margaret Ann Floto, one of the largest women I've ever seen, and then a tiny little Sister Karen Marie. And I'm sitting at the table addressing them, and human nature, I'm supposed to be addressing the Mother Superior, so I kept looking at Sister Margaret Ann, and I'm telling her what we're doing and how we're going to bring the film industry in there, how no one had ever done that before, and she kept going like that, and I thought, oh my God, she's got like some sort of nervous twitch, and I just felt bad, but I kept talking to her until finally she was like, it's fine. And I looked over, and the little Sister Karen Marie, must have been 4'2", looked at me and said, "That's right, I'm the Mother Superior, you should be talking to me." It's like, oh boy, my face feels like it's turning red now from that story, but you can imagine what it was like at that time. So I turned to talk to Sister Karen Marie, and everything's going great. No one had ever taken over a big building like this in LA before. I was breaking new ground, taking over big corporate facilities and turning them into film studios, a real estate reuse, and but for film industry purposes. And everything was back on track. It looked like the meeting was going well. We talked about what kind of productions, and I said, look, we're going to have Disney and Warner Brothers. We'll have feature films, and then I said the wrong words. I said, and music videos, and I said that right when Madonna had come out with Papa Don't Weep, but the Burning Cross, and she's singing in front of the Burning Cross, and I watched Sister Margaret Ann Floto and Sister Karen Marie's face turn like harlequins, like, oh, no, we wouldn't want anything like that. I had realized I had just made the biggest faux pas. How do you take that foot and your leg and everything out of your mouth? And it looked like right there, it was over. I looked like, well, I just blew it. And she said, oh, no, we wouldn't want any. Thank you very much anyway. We really wouldn't want anything like that on our property. So luckily, the chief finance officer jumped in. He said, Greg, how much money are we talking about? And I said, I don't know. No one's ever done this before, but I think it's going to be a lot, and I think this will do well. And the contracts, everything's going to run through you. You'll be able to have complete transparency. You look at it, and we'll see. And then the chief surgeon saved my ass, and he said, but Sister Karen Marie, he does have Walter Cronkite as a reference on his resume. I think we could give the guy a chance. So thank you, Wally. Thank you, Uncle Wally. Thank you, CBS. Thank you, God, for putting me in there and having Walter Cronkite as a reference. And based on that, they gave me a shot. And $3 or $4 million later, and 100 shoots that went through there, we were booked solid all the time. And it just took off, and suddenly I had my first film studio. And on there, it's one of the most rewarding experiences I ever had. I had a senior citizens home, I had a shelter for homeless and battered women. And the film industry has a lot of food that they throw away. The caterers, they throw a lot of food away. And I said, oh, what are you doing? Don't throw that away. I got a shelter for homeless and battered women right over here. So I started to take it over to the shelter. And then somebody along the way said, oh, you can't do that. Liabilities, they're going to sue us. Someone gets sick, they're going to sue us. And I was like, are you kidding me? Really, you want to stop this program? It's nice. You want to stop this because you're going to get sued. So I took a simple yellow pad of paper and I said, I take responsibility for what I put into my own mouth. And if I get sick, it's my own fault, and release the liability. Sign here. You want to eat? Sign here. I went back. I said, look, they've all given you the signatures. You're released from liability. So now it got that going again. And I also did the same thing for the caterers. I did the same thing for the shelter itself. So I made sure everyone is indemnified, only to find out later there's a Good Samaritan Act that allows that to happen and protects you anyway. But we started a great food program that did thousands and thousands of meals, because I not only did it at the Queen of Angels, but in my second and third studios. So I started a food program for the homeless that came out of the film industry and what they were throwing away, and started taking it over to homeless shelters. There was also a senior citizens home on the Queen of Angels. And I must have been there a year, and I didn't even know about the place. I mean, it was a campus on the other side of the campus, and someone said, oh, well, let's go over there and take a look. Maybe we can use some of that as locations. I went over, and I went into this senior citizens home that now is attached to my film studio that we call the Queen of Angels Studios. Went from Queen of Angels Hospital to Queen of Angels Studios. So I went over to look at this senior citizens home that I really hadn't been in before. And I walked into a room where for the first time in my life, I couldn't breathe. But from a soulful, from a spiritual level I can't even describe, there was a big common room with senior citizens sitting in chairs around it. In the far distance, another room with seniors sitting around it. There was the best way I can describe it, there was a light coming through the window that you could actually see the dust particles standing still, as every one of these seniors was. I walked into a room where people were waiting to die, doing nothing more, having nothing more to look forward to, and just waiting to die, in a room whose air stood still. And I couldn't breathe. I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I left there almost like, wow, what just happened? Where did I go into? I never got close. I never got that close to like the Grim Reaper and death before. And a fun thing, location managers, it's their job to spend as little of their budget as possible, most of the time. However much of their budget they can save, they can keep a big portion of it. So they're very incentivized to get every location for as little as possible. And location managers would always be coming into me saying, oh, Greg, your place is too expensive. It's too expensive, I can't afford it. So finally, one day I said, okay, so you're out of your location budget and you can't afford here? I feel terrible for you. I said, but look, you want to use it, right? How about being a little creative? Use a different side of the budget. Let's go to find some money in a different side of the budget, and you can bring that in here and make it work. And he's like, what are you talking about? I said, I tell you what, for every one of my seniors that you cast in these movies, I'll give you $100 off the location price. Suddenly we had like 20, 30, 40 seniors from that home were all going over there and became extras. So in a way, we just started a very successful casting program for seniors, and they were putting movies like crazy. When we did Ghost with Patrick Swayze and Demi Moore, which by the way just won a great award for one of the most memorable scenes that was ever recorded in film. And anybody who saw Ghost with Patrick Swayze and Demi Moore knows the scene that anybody who's seen the movie knows immediately what scene we're talking about. But there's a scene that just became on the list of most memorable scenes ever filmed in Hollywood. Anyway, we're shooting Ghost, and we have little Rhoda Blaney, a wonderful little woman who was a little more energetic than the others, but we cast her in there, and we had her down on the set, and then afterwards, she's on the phone talking to her niece or grandchild down in Florida saying, oh my God, I'm in this film, wait till you see it, you gotta see me, I'm standing right behind Patrick Swayze, I'm standing right behind Demi Moore, they're walking past me, they said hello to me, we're eating food. She had an energy that just illuminated, radiated out of her, and so did all of the others, and suddenly, that senior citizens home was back to life. It was so rewarding. Sister Cameron Reed later said to me, she said, Greg, you brought that back to life. She said, I never saw anything like it. It's like some miracle worker came and watered completely dead plants. It just came right back into full bloom. And it was one of the most rewarding things I'd ever done. And sometimes what would be funny is I'd have all these famous actors on the sets, and everyone I'd be walking around and I'd be helping the seniors, and I'd be getting food over to the homeless shelter. And people like, Greg, you're the head of the studio. What are you doing over there? You got all these actors downstairs. You got directors, producers, and you're over doing this stuff. But it's whatever we decide we find value in our lives. I love building my studios, but I loved creating those programs. We even had a program for runaway kids that they could come and help us collect the food, and we got Disney to donate a van that we could put all the food into and start delivering it to other shelters because we had so much food. But then shortly after that, I contracted with Donald Trump, and we took over the Ambassador Hotel. Marrying Man with Kim Basinger was shooting there, and they were getting into all kinds of problems. Trump was shutting the production down, and Hollywood Pictures was saying they're over budget, they're not on schedule, they're over budget, and it was getting in the papers, and someone said, you know, this guy Gregg Sullivan's got a studio, a little well-oiled machine going on in this hospital. You should come visit him. Donald came over with an entourage of people, and I had a very, very lucky day. Usually I might have 1 or 2 feature films going. I had 3 that day, all in different parking lots, all entering the building in different places, not running into each other, and then going up elevators and over here and this way, not crossing paths at all, but 3 feature films being orchestrated at the same time. I think Ghost might have been one of them, but regardless, someone said he's got this great facility, go over and meet him. Trump came over with an entourage, I walked him around, and it was totally great. And he said, listen, yeah, and he liked me because I was from New York, and he was Trump. He's like, wait, these fucking, I shouldn't curse here. He said, what do you think of these assholes in Hollywood? They're liars, they do this, they do that, they do whatever they want, you can't count on anything. And he said, come over, I got this problem with them, and you think you can handle it? I didn't know. So I went over and I talked to the guys from Hollywood Pictures, and I saw all the problems. They were all so simple. They were so simple things, but it was the Rams on the top of a mountaintop with Disney and Hollywood Pictures battling against each other, that they couldn't get anything together. But Trump was renting the place out for square footage, and you don't do that by the film industry. You're renting it for time and for space, and so little things like the audio guy with the Nagra, and he's got his Nagra around the side of a wall with his cables around there, and he's got his monitors and his headset so he can really concentrate on the audio. But that was not part of the square footage that they had rented. The guy from the Trump representative came down and said, what are you doing here? You guys didn't rent this. You can do anything you want, but you didn't rent this. And the Nagra guy's like, what are you talking about? I'm just the audio guy. And all of a sudden, stop the production, little things like that, but it was just the different disciplines. Trump didn't know this discipline of the creative industry, and people didn't know that Trump comes from a background that if you want to put a quad box electric socket on a wall, it's going to take this much pipe, it's going to take these many hours, and you can calculate exactly how much it's going to cost. And if you come in plus or minus 5 or 10% deviation ratio from the projections of what it's going to cost to what it's actually going to cost, you call them to the office to explain why. You can't do that in the film industry. You know, Whoopi Goldberg sneezes, and next thing you know, you're 4 hours over. And so they're very different disciplines. But they did not mix. Oil and water, they didn't mix. So I came in, I started talking to Hollywood Pictures, started talking to those guys, started talking to Trump. He said, Greg, just get them out of here. Just get them out. And I got them out on schedule and under budget. I've been very happy about that. I'm still very proud of having done that. But it really launched my career in a much bigger way. All of a sudden, Trump said, hey, keep doing it here. So we turned the Ambassador Hotel into a film studio. And I got to work with guys like Michael Tadros when we did Forrest Gump. And at the time, Tadros was running Paramount Pictures. I really didn't get to associate him with him much then when we were doing Forrest Gump. And most of the time I was in the office trying to figure out how to run a studio and making it up as I went along. But later, in fact, within the last couple of years, I've gotten friendly with Mike again, and one of the most wonderful guys in the film industry. I met him at the Friars Club again. I met him a while ago when he was doing Mike and Tina's wedding. Mike and Tina's wedding, I forget what it was, but they were shooting it up in a stage up in Westchester. But I've gotten to know him, and he's been a wonderful help. So I love the people in the film industry. I love what we've done there. I built it. I did one more studio up in Burbank, the Halliburton, Dick Cheney's Halliburton. Bought a metal manufacturing company called Zero. They would make those little metal boxes that go, the black boxes that go on airplanes, and the suitcases that you see chained to people in the airports. They'd make that kind of thing. Halliburton bought it, but then Utah incentivized them to bring the business there. So they abandoned 285,000 square feet of raw, empty warehouse space. 40-foot ceilings, clear expanse, 80,000 square feet, 60,000 square feet, 240,000 square feet, 120. I had these huge empty boxes that made perfect stages. And then at that point, I started making deals with equipment companies because I was generating so much film business that I'm making deals with Paramount equipment, with other equipment companies, and supplying that to the production companies, and then I did housekeeping deals where I was helping production companies come in and home base for free. I'll give you your offices, and I'll commit to these stages for you and help you get your financing. And once you get your financing, you'll be using, the deal was you're going to use my studios. So that worked really well for everybody. And over the years, I had a nice run. 300 films. 300 films went through my studios and across the 10 years. But because I was doing that, and actually I'm going into some stuff that is part of this book and this living novel, but because I was doing that, and because I was generating so much business, even more than some of the studio's backlots, I was getting all kinds of press. I'm on the cover of Production Magazine, a younger man with dark glasses and dark hair, and I'm on this magazine that says Production. The new kid on the block takes on the old industry. So I'm in the papers, I'm in Hollywood Reporter, I'm in Variety Magazine. I kind of felt like Forrest Gump meets Hunter Thompson. I mean, I didn't know what I was doing, but I was in all these great places. But I got asked by the California Film Commission, by Melissa Higgins, who was the commissioner at the time, to come help start a self-governing body of all of these businesses that were kind of doing what I was doing, representing somebody else's property and for a location and acting as an agent and making a percentage of it. I was the only one doing it in big corporate ways with large buildings and campuses, but a lot of people doing it with private homes, and they were kind of unregulated. And I met Julie Meyer Wright. She was from the Department of Commerce, and they all looked at it and they said, Mr. Sullivan, you're doing a great business. You're generating so many film permits, and films are going through your places, and you're giving them a great value. You're actually keeping a lot of the industry back in Hollywood when there was the runaway production problems. So they said, but we have this problem with people doing kind of what you're doing. Would you be interested in helping us start a self-governing body? And I said, self-governing body? You mean like a trade? And they said, yeah, I mean, like a trade association. Well, my vanity sincerely appealed to, and I'm thinking, oh my God, look where I'm going in my career. I said, sure, I volunteered for that, not knowing what the hell I was doing, and found myself in the middle of the night reading Robert's Rules of Order and Parliamentary Procedure and saying, okay, what's a quorum? What's a quorum? I mean, how do you need to a quorum? How do you do this? And learning everything I could as fast as possible. But we put together 32 different companies, location companies, from all the way down to San Diego up to Santa Barbara. All of them would come down to my offices for these big meetings, and we did wonderful work. We had, I had to lead off all the committees at first, but we had the contract committee to standardize contracts. We had the finance committee for fiduciary performance. What are the guidelines for fiduciary performance? We had that. We started a arbitration panel for problem resolution. We made a lot of great contributions, but we also helped lower the cost of production. So suddenly I'm the head of a trade association, the Association of Film Location Services. And we did a lot of good work, and that still exists to today. And we were the first to help digitize the film industry's location databases. Because of that work, I was kind of seen as a figurehead for the location industry, so I got invited to be a consultant at the University of Southern California, USC, on developing internet technologies for film industry use. And first, my real focus first was just locations. How do we do these locations? And I kept thinking, well, I've got 32 different companies, and the way it works, everyone takes photographs, and I have to email or FedEx the photographs to somebody. Someone goes into their office, takes photographs, goes back to the production company, comes back. Very cumbersome. And I said, if we digitized all of these photographs, we could put them into a database that all of our members, a benefit of membership is you can have all your things into a database, people can access it, they can see your locations without having to travel all these distances, without having to pay for the gas, paying for the days that it takes to go do this stuff, and it wound up being a very big cost savings. And Jeff Johns from the National Association of Realtors comes down to, I got introduced to him from Professor Belson in the University of Southern California, who led this kind of secret lab that we were doing. And he said, Greg, this is Jeff Johns, and he's with the National Association of Realtors, and they're looking and seeing that maybe there's something for them and how we're doing these databases and digitizing them. Well, the MLS, for all of you real estate agents out there, when you're going to the MLS, a lot of people don't know, the MLS came out of the film industry. They looked at what we were doing in the film industry and how we were digitizing and cataloging and storing pictures of houses, of properties, and they looked, and the MLS that you're using today came out of the film industry, and I loved that I was part of that. Right there in the beginning. So here are these things. I'm running studios. I've got trade shows that I'm going to with a new association I'm introducing that we've just consolidated 32 different companies in a film location association, and that's done a lot of good work. And then I'm consulting at USC on internet technologies, and I am working all over the place. I'm getting in more press and more press. There's a Hollywood Reporter that talks about Hollywood getting into the digital age. It talks about me and all of my work, and I look back at that and think, wow, was that me? It's so funny. Was that me? But like I said, Forrest Gump meets Hunter Thompson. How I was in the middle of all that at the right time, right place, I don't know. But thank God I was there. So how do I wrap this up and just say, make sure you stay tuned for the next podcast.